Welcome to the channel, everybody. I'm going to be doing a book review on the new release by Rob Copeland entitled The Fund, Ray Dalio, Bridgewater Associates, and the Unraveling of a Wall Street Legend. Now, first, I would just like to throw out there that I have already gone through this book 2 or 3 times. I went through it with a fine-tooth comb, vetting anything I could online to check for accuracy, and I do want to state right off the bat for the record, everything I could find checked out. This is a topic I take really seriously, and I didn't want to spread any potential misinformation if the author wasn't being forthcoming about something, but from everything I can see, everything in this book checks out. If you follow my channel, you will have seen that before I have released a few videos on Ray Dalio, and the reason I developed an interest in Ray Dalio, well, he's a businessman, right? Hedge fund investor, one of the richest guys in America. Well, I was a business major in university, and Ray Dalio also has a long-term relationship and friendship with China. And with me, I'm currently living in China. I've got a decade's worth of experience being here in mainland China. So I think you can see there are some natural commonalities, or there's definitely some common ground. And you can probably see why I developed this initial interest in Ray Dalio. Well, initially, I was going to go through and make a really detailed book review and summary of this, and I spent a lot of time on it. I mean, I've gone through this book with a fine-tooth comb. I was basically breaking it down chapter by chapter and giving a review, but about halfway through and after spending about 20 hours on it, not the actual book reading, but on the actual writing and video editing, it just occurred to me that while I really appreciate this author for doing this work, I may be accidentally doing him a disservice by going into too much detail about his book. I wasn't quoting him at all. Everything was just my own interpretation and summary, but I was giving a very detailed review and to some extent a summary, and it was just far too detailed. Because something like that, in theory, could prevent people from buying the author's book. So I scrapped that. I wish I would have thought about that a little bit sooner before I spent all that time and effort working on it. The good news is, though, is that because I've gone through it in such detail, I know the contents of that book extremely well. It's fresh in my mind, and I can just sit here with a cup of coffee and give you all a very clear, comprehensive book review. First and foremost, I want to give a big shout out to the author, Rob Copeland, for even being able to finish this book. If you decide to read it, which I highly suggest that you do, I would recommend you starting from the back. I would read the afterword first, which is called Ray and I, and then after that, read his notes on sources, because in that part of the book, you'll learn more about how many impediments Ray Dalio tried to put in the way of this author to prevent this book from ever being written. Not only was he very uncooperative, but he also threatened him with lawsuits, threatened him with this and that. So it took a lot of courage for this author to be able to just persist and proceed and actually get it done. Because when you've got a multi-billionaire threatening you like this, that would intimidate just about anybody. Not only was Dalio intimidating the author himself, but he was going to the company that he worked for and intimidating them as well, threatening them with lawsuits. He would reach out to former Bridgewater staff and current Bridgewater staff and warn them about cooperating with this author. So Ray Dalio, if you're listening to this, I just want to say shame on you for being such a little coward. If you read the book, it's easy to see why Dalio didn't want this getting out there, because it tells his story and it brings back to light some of the things that he's done and the way Bridgewater operated, and a lot of it doesn't reflect too well on Ray. That's just the reality of it. If you go on Google and just search Ray Dalio and Bridgewater, there is no shortage of negative blog entries or negative articles about the way Ray Dalio acted, about some of the things that happened at Bridgewater, about his overall management philosophy and these ridiculous principles that he was so obsessed with. But when you've got an author putting it into a comprehensive book, it's going to be on the bookshelves, and it will probably end up being a bestseller. You can see why Ray Dalio wasn't too thrilled about this book's release. Now, this book was released on November 7th, 2023, by the way. So I really do think that if you start from the end of the book first, you'll have more of an appreciation for what this author went through just to be able to make this book become a reality. Because I can tell you, Just from reading about it, it certainly was not easy, and it took some serious cojones from this author. Now, so for the book itself, is it worth reading? Well, absolutely yes. It was a fantastic book. Not dry, not boring, very readable. And this author did his due diligence in talking to actual sources, getting firsthand accounts. This author really put his heart and soul into this book. The book tells about Ray's background and how he got his start. And I have to tip my hat to Ray because what he did is quite remarkable. Not just every Dick, Jane, and Harry would be able to start where Ray Dalio started from, or even start in a better position, and go on to operate the world's largest and most successful hedge fund. So I'm not trying to dump on Ray Dalio's accomplishments or insult his intelligence. Obviously, for a person to do what he did, the guy is highly intelligent. That said, the guy is also highly quirky. He comes across as being quite sensitive and short-fused. And for me, the biggest thing, and the main reason why I personally hold such strong negative feelings toward Ray Dalio, is because of the hypocrisy. To me, he seems like the ultimate hypocrite. And a lot of this I already knew about before reading this book, just from my own research. I mean, you can see I've got a few videos about Dalio, so I have researched Dalio a lot myself. I remember that chapter 17 in this book goes into detail a lot about Ray Dalio and his connection with China. Most of the things that were talked about in that chapter can be seen in my video about Ray Dalio in China, which I will put a link to that video in the video description below. But the author did add a lot of extra things to it and dig up a lot of stuff that I didn't even know. So chapter 17 is one that really goes into detail about Ray Dalio and his relationship with China and the Chinese elite. And it was actually the topic of China that made me start to see Ray for who I perceive him to be, which is a hypocritical opportunist. You see, the thing is, I've spent about a decade in China. I study Mandarin. I interact with common Chinese people every day, and I know people from all walks of life and all levels on the socioeconomic spectrum. I've had dinner with high-level officials. I've had dinner with low-level street sweepers, and everything in between. So I won't go into too much detail and dig up the specifics that were in that chapter. I will say that if you're interested in that aspect of Ray Dalio's life and that part of his story, you should definitely read this book and you should definitely watch my video. Link below. But as we all know, anytime you hear the name Ray Dalio, you associate it with different things. You associate it with, well, money, riches, and you also associate it with one solitary word that starts with a P: principles. This is the common thread that runs throughout the entire book, Ray Dalio and his principles. He actually believes that his principles is his greatest contribution to mankind. He thinks it's revolutionary. It's going to revolutionize the entire world, not only the business world, but also just in people's everyday lives. He's had top-level AI and computer experts try to develop an app that essentially takes his brain and puts it into an app. So anytime you've got an issue, just like you would talk to Siri, you could talk to the app. And I don't know what you would ask it. Maybe, what would Ray do in this situation? What do the principles guide me to do? It looks like that app really never went anywhere. But if you thought the principles were cringeworthy before, wait until you read this book because they really lay it open and lay it bare. And also I found out from this book that the principles that are in Ray Dalio's biography, Principles, Life and Work, are different than the principles that they had within Bridgewater. An extraordinary life, you would have to say that Ray Dalio has certainly led. The success he has reached, he's done a lot of interesting things in his life, but he does seem like a very petty and unpleasant man. And it's not just me that thinks this from what I've learned about Ray Dalio. I've never personally met the guy, and I'm sure that I never will. But this book tells the story of many actual former Bridgewater employees, and all except for, I believe, one person went by their real names in the book. And that alone just right away adds an extra level of credibility to the author. Because like I said, when he writes something, when he's using the person's actual name and telling real things that happened, you can look it up online to verify that it's true. And I did verify that the things were true. And throughout his career, it has seemed that Ray Dalio, in terms of good relationships, I mean, he's got a lot of relationships, but in terms of good, meaning relationships with people who actually truly like and respect him and are very close to him, I walked away from this book feeling like Ray Dalio is probably quite a lonely man. But it's a little easier to feel lonely, I guess, when you've got billions upon billions upon billions in the bank. I don't have that problem, so if you want to learn about Ray Dalio's background, you've got to read this book. If you want to learn about some of the really crazy stories that happened at Bridgewater, you've got to read this book. And apparently, the rights to this book have already been bought by a major production company, and it looks like they will probably be making a TV series based on this book. And I really can't wait for that. That's going to be fantastic. If Ray Dalio didn't like this book coming out, I can promise you that he really won't like that TV series coming out, because I'm very confident that it will end up trending. And every time Ray looks across his TV screen and sees #1 on trending, the fund, his brow will start to sweat. His palms will become clammy. His blood pressure will start to rise and his cheeks will turn rosy red. Well, you know what? I don't feel sorry for you, Ray, because there's something called accountability. You might be a powerful billionaire that can buy whatever you want. You've lived an extraordinary, amazing life. Nothing is beyond your reach. You can get anything you want. You can go anywhere, anytime, and you can do it on a private jet. But there is one thing that money can sort of help you wiggle your way out of, but not completely. And that's called accountability. And the main takeaway for me regarding this book is that I think it holds Ray Dalio and Bridgewater accountable. Because as the boss, he's been able to violate his own principles. He's been able to downtalk people. He's been able to insult people. He's been able to bully people. If he wants good press, he's so rich he could probably just pay people off to write something good about him. And if they write anything bad, he could go after them. Which from this book I learned he definitely does go after people that have anything negative to say about him. But despite all that, this book does hold him accountable, and whether Ray likes it or not, he has to answer for his previous actions. Well, he chooses not to answer because he said he's not going to speak about the book. Well, that's Ray's choice, but the reality is that a lot of people are going to be reading this book. And if the TV series comes out, even a lot more people will be watching that and learning about his story. And it's not out to demonize the guy, but it's out to tell his story as it was. And it's not necessarily all that flattering. So while Ray may not want to directly answer for it, he has that right, he has that choice, he can just plead the fifth. But while he's doing that, people will be formulating opinions, and from this book I learned how important it is to Ray for people to have a good opinion of him. He made a very strong push to try to get a good image of himself out to the world. He has worked very hard on that. And I can say with confidence that this book and the TV series that's going to be coming out most likely, well, I think they're going to shatter that pristine image that Ray Dalio tried to give out to the world. And you know, living in China, I paid extra special attention to Ray's story and his relationship with China, and I can see right through the guy. He's an opportunist. He tried to cozy up to the elite here, get as many benefits as he could. He got huge amounts of investments into Bridgewater from China and Chinese elites. And the nature of doing business with China, or any Chinese entities, is that you're doing business with China itself, and they do not accept or tolerate criticism. So that's why Ray has always had to bite his tongue and really just suck up and brown nose to China. But you know, the thing of it is, all that sucking up and all those interviews and those books, and his book, Principles for Dealing with the Changing World Order, where he says that basically the U.S. is on its way down. It's terminally ill. According to the big cycle, the U.S. is on its way down, China's on its way up, and it's going to be the new world power for probably around the next 250 years. I mean, just from where I sit and from what I've seen from Ray Dalio, I have seen him shit on his country time and time again. A country where he had the opportunity to do what he did. And he sure loves to complain about America and complain about the great political divide and how we have all these problems. And I know Ray Dalio and Bridgewater do charitable work, but I haven't seen him really do anything of substance to get involved and try to actually help his country. I do know for a fact that he's worked very hard to cozy up to the Chinese elite, to meet the top dogs in Russia, so it does seem to me like he's got a thing for autocracies. But while he's always talking about these problems facing the U.S., why not get involved and try to do something, try to bring people together? And at the same time, a man with as much money as him, he still always watches his words so carefully when he's asked about China. You can look it up. I mean, he's faced a lot of backlash and blowback from his comments on China and his constant, well, what most of us perceive to be shilling for China. A man with as much money as Dalio, you still got to be a shill, Dalio? I mean, once you've got that money, it doesn't seem like you have to really be anybody's slave. It seems like you would have the balls to be able to just give your honest opinion on things. Don't bite your tongue, don't beat around the bush. And the way I know Dalio does that is because his words and actions regarding China don't match up. If he knows China half as well as he says he does, he realizes they have a lot of issues. And some very big, deep issues. But he won't dare speak on them. But he'll always happily push forward the narrative that they want pushed. He'll give them glowing praise for their poverty alleviation, but he won't mention the fact that while they say they've alleviated poverty, the standard for what is considered poverty, or the poverty line, the standard is so much lower in China than it is in other countries. So trust me, there is still a lot of poverty here. But he won't say that. He won't speak the truth because he doesn't have the balls to. And this isn't even in the book, but in my research, I saw that while Ray was still publicly claiming to be extremely bullish on China investments, he was selling his own. And from the book, which I won't give specifics because you've got to buy the book to find out, he was also doing other things that were at odds publicly and privately when it comes to China. So this is getting long. Gave you my thoughts on the book plus a whole lot extra. I do hope that you'll continue to follow me, follow my channel, support my work. I really appreciate everybody that supports what I do here. Look forward to hearing from you all in the comments section below. And if you would like to go that extra mile and shoot a little extra support my way, please consider checking me out on patreon.com or on Buy Me a Coffee. Links below. Any contributions I get from there or for YouTube will all be invested back into this channel. And in 2024, I have a lot of things coming up for you all. Can't wait to see you all there. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out for now. Hope you've enjoyed hearing me rambling on. Stay happy, healthy, and blessed. 下次再见.